Hi and welcome back to the How to Craft Network. My name is Claire Manning from Thirsty Brush, and today we're going to do another crafting video for you. I'm actually going to revisit some of the techniques that I haven't done for a little while and show you how to combine a few different of your Thirsty Brush designs, or hopefully give you some ideas for whatever you've got in your stash. So if you haven't been to this channel before, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe below, hitting the bell, and you will be notified of all the videos that we upload for you. Plenty of card making, home decor, stamping, die cutting, everything to do with paper craft and more on the channel for you. I'm here on Sundays and Thursdays at 1 p.m. and in between there are lots of other videos from the likes of Tony Darrett from Stamps by Me and Simon from Avago Inc. and more coming. So what I'm going to do is show you the Thirsty Brush items that I'm going to be using. Of course, if you don't have these, don't worry, I'm sure you'll have something similar in your stash to use. So the first is a pattern paper. We did these huge 12 by 12 papers, and if I just flick through a few, they're really kind of bold, florals, foliage, loads of kind of corals, oranges and blues there, and that pad is called Bellini, based on those kind of colours. So like I say, these ones are still available. Made sure that these ones are available on the website for you, but please don't worry if you've got something. I'm sure you've got a pattern paper with some kind of large designs in your stash somewhere. Next thing I'm going to use is one of our best-selling dies from earlier on. And I think it was 2019, don't quote me on that, maybe even 2018, but I still love it, and you guys still tell me that you love it too. And it's a driftwood die, and you can see that it cuts and embosses at the same time, or you can take the cut piece away and just emboss to give texture in your cardstock. So we're going to use that as quite a focal point actually on the card. Last couple of things, I'm going to use the Forever Friends for some sentiment, and Luminosity embossing. This is the starter kit where you get the pen, and I'll show you how to use that. It's a dual-ended pen and some gold embossing powder that comes with it. But again, you just grab whatever you've got. I thought it's nice for you to see before we start, so you can get everything together if you did want to follow along. One other thing that you mentioned to me, guys, when last time I did my Create and Craft show, is that you loved me doing large cards for a change. So I'm doing another 7 by 10 card here. This is one that I did with the Happy Hour collection last week. And you said you absolutely loved, because I do a lot of 5 by 7s. And you said you loved seeing the larger cards and getting ideas about how to fill that space, but still not being scared of a bit of white area as well. So I thought we can talk about that too. So I'm going to start with the die, the driftwood die. Just grab a piece of plain white card. First of all, we're just going to run it through the die cutting machine and get that lovely shape die cut out. And like I say, embosses at the same time, so that's really, really useful. Don't have to run it through again. What I would say is all the die cutting machines are different, as you know. So if you run it through on yours and it hasn't embossed deep enough for you, just add an extra piece of card, maybe as a shim, or if you haven't used your magnetic sheet underneath. It does need a fair bit of pressure, but just play around and see what your machine. This one doesn't need, this cut and emboss that Tony's got here doesn't need an extra one. It embosses perfectly well without it. So just run that through. Like I say, this is going to be quite a focal point on the card. It's quite a big die. It's almost about 5 by 7 by itself, just a little bit smaller. So that's going to give us a real kind of driftwood look, and we're going to add some colour to it in a moment. So just pop that scrap and the die aside. And straight away there, I hope you can see the texture, but as we add colour, we will be able to get that texture out a little bit more anyway. But can you see there how it's embossed all that detail? And that's hand-drawn detail that I put on there for you. So it's really kind of natural looking. Okay, so I'm going to add some colour. Just going to get a scrap piece of card just to put on my surface so I don't get ink everywhere. And I'm going to try, I use oxides a lot, which are the kind of chalky distress inks. I'm actually going to try using an oxide and an ink together. I've got a kind of browny one called Walnut Stain and Hickory Smoke, which is a grey. So I really do want it to look like old wood that's washed up on the beach, and it's a bit grimy and it's a bit messy, but it's got that lovely kind of shabby chic look to it. So just tap off any excess, and I'm going from the edge of the card, and you will see now all that detail that's embossed in there starts to really, really pop out. So I want to do kind of not all of it the same colour and the same amount of pressure. I want some dark areas, some light areas, because that's what you would get on the wood, isn't it, naturally? Catches the edges really nicely. And I'd say go a little bit less first, and you can always add more colour. Just going to take off the excess of that so I can go into the grey. And I just wanted to see how I tend to use either the distress ink, which are dye-based, or the oxides, which are ink, dye and pigment-based. I don't tend to use them together, so I just wanted to see what would happen really and how they would blend together. So it's a bit of an experiment too. But that's adding some nice different tones into that wood. Just a little bit more. You could keep going and get it darker if you want. I don't want it too overly dark. For this one, but you know, by all means, if you want to keep going. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Oops. Lovely. Let's pop those inks aside and get rid of, actually I won't get rid of the excess yet because we're going to do a bit of spritzing. So I've got some like kitchen roll or tissue here and a spray bottle with some water. So you can either do this with drips using your fingers or a brush, or I'm going to give it a spritz. Leave it for a couple of seconds, and then that water starts to react with the ink and it starts to lift it. And then when you dab, and you see it starts to kind of bleach and it starts to look like real wood. There's a little bit there it hasn't quite gone on, so, and again you can do this as much or as little as you like. So just dab off that water. I'm really happy with that wood now, and we can use it any way we want. That's that element done. So next, I want to kind of layer on top of that wood some of the flowers from the paper pad. So I've got a couple of different sheets that I've picked out, and I've started, just because fussy cutting them takes a little bit of time, so I've started taking some of these little branches and blossoms from this one here. I've done one of the smaller flowers and a leaf from this one, and I'm just going to cut another piece from here now. Grab my scissors. I haven't done any fussy cutting for a long, long time, and I just fancied giving it a go. So I'm just going to as carefully as I can, but I'm not worrying too much. Cut round this main flower and the leaves that pop out of this side here. And if you're not the most amazing fussy cutter and you get little bits sometimes left over, I'm going to show you an easy way to make it look even better. These papers are quite thick, so you do sometimes get the kind of white showing a little bit. But I've got a trick up my sleeve to show you how to get rid of that and make it look more professional. I'm just going to roughly cut around that bit so I can get rid of this excess. So it'll be easier for me to cut around that detail then. Again, I'm just going to follow around as best I can. Should only take a minute or so. I thought the yellows and the orangey tones in these flowers will just go lovely with the wood and make, for a change, a kind of bright and summery but somewhat muted card as well. So these kind of 3 leaves already pop out from behind the flower, so I thought may as well take advantage of that and use it in the design. Or you can cut them out separate, up to you. If you are here for the first time and haven't joined in on the live chat, do pop in and say hello in the comments. Although I record this Sunday show when I'm in the How to Craft studio, I do pop in and say hello on the comments as well. So do say hi. There's plenty of other crafters there. And of course, if you have any questions, I'll be there live to answer them for you. So just this last leaf. Sometimes it's nice to do a bit of mindful cutting, isn't it? And if you've got our papers and have enjoyed the different bold designs that we've used before, do keep a lookout, because a bit of a sneak peek, I have got some more coming very soon. Right then. Okay, so just get rid of that bit of rubbish. So I mentioned about adding some extra detail and neatening up your edges. So there's a couple of different ways that we can do this, and I'm going to use my luminosity ink in the pen and with the ink pad as well. Let me just grab some excess. Let's pop it on there. So the first way is to use your ink pad, and you can put the card and kind of dab it, the edge of it, into the ink pad itself. And that's going to allow us to pick up the powder. Not going to get everywhere because of all the detail, but it's going to randomly pick up bits of powder on the edge and just give it a little bit of extra finish. So let's try that first, and then we'll try another way using the pen as well. It's just going to pick up tiny, tiny amounts on the edge. And this looks great as well if you have our vellums. A really nice technique to use with any pattern papers or vellums that you've got, that you've fussy cut around. So like I say, just tiny little bits. Just that extra flourish. Oops. So let's heat set that, and the gold should come out nice and bright now. See if I can get it so I can show you on the camera as well. You see those tiny little gold tips? I'll hold it up for you in a moment. It's hard to hold it at the right angle and get you to see at the same time. I don't know if you can see it on the edge of that flower. Ah, there we go, in the light. And it just gives that extra little bit of flurry. See the shine on there? So it's subtle, but that's the whole idea, just so it covers up a lot of those little areas where you'd see the white of the paper. So if you want to add even more detail, if you use an embossing pen, so ours has got a brush nib and a bullet nib, so you can choose which one you use. I'm going to have a go with the brush nib. And can you see this central area here where you've got the stamens of the flower? I'm just going to do a few random strokes, and of course it's clear like the embossing ink. You're not going to see, oh thank you, sorry, got the water in the way. You're not going to see anything until the powder goes on. And then I'm also going to go along some of these like veins in the flower. So let's put some powder on that now and see how that looks as well. I always think when you're making cards, these are the extra bits that give it a real personal touch, and people know you spent a lot of time and effort in your cards. So let's heat set that one and see how that looks. This should be more obvious now because I've used the thick end of the brush. So we've got loads of shine there in the centre of the flower. It's made it look really, really pretty. So I've got that, and I've got the bits that I cut out earlier on. I've also done a sentiment ready, just the little Friends one from the Friends Forever set that I showed you before. And I've got my card blank. So before I put it together, I just want to add, I'm thinking of putting everything kind of on this side. I will arrange more in a moment, but I just want some kind of splashes behind of some paint. So I'm just going to do that before I stick this piece of card on. And I've got just some watercolours. I think I've got, oh, I have got a larger brush, yeah. Just thinking what kind of colours to do with this. Shall we stay with the neutrals, or I might go in with a kind of reddy orange and bring that bit out. So I've got a little bit of orangey here. We add to that. Maybe just tone it down a tiny bit. to blend a little bit more. Okay, get my brush nice and wet, and I'm just going to flash against my finger to get some flats there. And it's just going to look like those are popping out from behind where I put everything else. I think that's enough. Again, just those extra little touches sometimes. Let me just wipe down so I don't get my paint everywhere. And I'm just going to run my heat tool over that. Just so I don't smudge it too much. I don't mind an odd little bit because sometimes that actually adds to it if you get an odd little smudge, but I don't want the whole thing just looking like a mess. So I've got my 7x10 card, get some tape, and I've cut down a piece of navy that will just bring out those slight tones of blues in the flowers, just to bring it all together. And this is going to mat and layer and just give us kind of frame. I think sometimes as well, it's good to have a look at what stamps and dies and papers and things you've got at home. And even if you've bought them together within a specific collection, it doesn't mean that you can't use them together in other ways, because it's easy for me to do demos with collections that I've purposely put everything together so they coordinate. What's sometimes a little harder to do at home is think about, okay, so I've got this piece from this collection and this piece from that collection. How can I make them work and make them work a little bit harder for you, so you're not just using them with what you bought them with originally. So now that paint splats. So this is where a lot of people get scared with a big card, because you think that's a lot of space to fill. So we've got the wood first, and if you want, you can kind of curl up edges a little bit and just add to that real rustic look of it. I'm just going to glue it down. I'm not going to raise this with any foam pads because I want to add things over the top. I'm not going to make it too bulky. And like I say, you could put it either way. I think I'm going to kind of put it here. And then I want to think about how these flowers go on. And this is the bit, I'm not putting glue anywhere near anything until I'm completely happy with where I'm going to put everything on my design. Again, you can do a little bit of texture if you're not going to post this card. You can start adding a little bit of texture. Of course, the more you do, you're not going to want to put it in an envelope. You maybe use a box or something like that. Otherwise, all the bit of shaping that you do will be lost. But this is really good. Is it 200 GSM, our papers? Yeah, 200 GSM uncoated. So that's what allows you to manipulate them and stamp on them, emboss on them, all those lovely things. It'll even take a certain amount of watercolour. It's not as thick as watercolour card. I'm just thinking about how I want to kind of lay them out. I don't want to cover up too much of that wood. I think maybe layer those two papers. I'm going to chop that down a bit. And you know, if it doesn't work, you just keep going until you're happy with the design that you've done. Like these little blossomy bits. I think we'll have some of those. Okay, so I think something like that. And then we'll probably have the sentiment over here. Yeah, I think that should work. So let's lift everything up. Try and remember where I've put them. I'm not doing the glue right to the edge again because I've given it a little bit of shape. And the flowers kind of facing them away from each other to give it a nice kind of feel. And then we just need to add on these little bits. I bet I'm putting them in different places now, but I think once you've got a rough idea in your head, you can play around and you'll start to feel for what looks right. Before I add that last flower, I'm going to do the sentiment. I wonder if we can tuck it in a little bit. And then maybe have that last flower coming up. So doing those layers has given us loads and loads of texture. You can go in and keep moving things around so you feel that it looks really nice. But something a bit different for me, some of those more muted colours. But hopefully that gives you some ideas of what to do with different elements from different collections. So we've got a stamp there, we've got a die, we've got some papers and a different way to use your embossing. So I do hope you enjoyed that, and I will be back with you on Thursday at 1 p.m. for some more demonstrations. Take care, guys, and I will see you next time.